In the basement, Oliver was met by the icy smell of dampness and mold, which hit him in the face as soon as he opened the door. Descending the creaky steps, he froze when the dim light of the single lamp illuminated a grim scene. His 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, sat on a bare, damp mattress, hugging herself tightly and trembling with fear, dressed only in a thin summer dress. Next to her on the floor was a small bowl of murky water intended for his dog. The girl wasn't crying, just sobbing quietly, her gaze indifferent, as if looking through the wall. She was clutching a worn teddy bear, as if trying to find protection from the bone-chilling cold. Oliver fell to his knees. Suddenly, the steady click of heels sounded on the stairs, and his wife Carolina entered the doorway. Her face was displeased, and she glanced at the watch on her wrist. "What does this mean?" Oliver said hoarsely, his voice almost indistinguishable. "Ah, you've already found our little artist," Carolina said with an icy smile, not even glancing at the girl. "She certainly knows how to attract attention." "With a dog bowl," he croaked, his chest tightening with a wave of anger. "Honey, don't be so picky," she sighed with relief. "It's the only dish that could be stained without pity." 2 years ago, after his wife's death, Oliver was left alone with his daughter, Chloe. He sought solace from loneliness by immersing himself in work and business trips. Chloe, a cheerful girl, became withdrawn after the tragedy, and her father became her only refuge. A year ago, Oliver married Carolyn, hoping that she would be a good mother to Chloe. However, carried away by his new relationship, he did not notice how his daughter was becoming more and more distant. He explained this as a consequence of an old trauma, not suspecting that Carolyn, jealous of her husband's past, was cruelly punishing the girl in his absence. Before her last long business trip, Carolyn convinced Oliver that his daughter's behavior was just a whim. Oliver paid no attention to his wife's words, his gaze fixed on his daughter's trembling figure. He took a step forward, but Chloe did not react, as if she had sunk into some detached world. Kneeling down, he touched the girl's icy cheek, and she flinched, her eyes filled not with joy but with animal fear. Oliver's heart sank, and the world around him seemed to crack. He took off his jacket, covered his daughter with it, and, ignoring Carolina, who stood frozen in place, carried Chloe to her room. In the nursery, he gently laid the girl on the bed, but she held on tightly to his shirt, unwilling to let go. He brought a basin of warm water, gently washed her dirty hands and feet, then helped her change into soft pajamas. In the silence, which was almost deafening, he sat by her bed for a long time, but Chloe did not close her eyes, remaining wide awake. Opening the door slightly, he went down to the living room, where Carolina sat calmly with a glass of wine. "I demand an explanation." Oliver's voice sounded quiet but firm. "I have already explained everything," Carolina replied. "Chloe was punished for breaking the antique vase you brought from Shanghai. It's very expensive." Oliver was silent, his gaze piercing. "She was only there for 10 minutes, Carolina added, her voice softening. "I was just about to let her go. Children need to learn responsibility. She's manipulating you, dear. This whole basement story is just a ploy to make me look like the villain." Carolina's words struck Oliver as convincing. He was exhausted and desperately wanted to believe her, because the alternative seemed terrible to him. Peace in his home was what he wanted so badly, and all the blame for his constant departures fell on his shoulders. "All right," he said finally. We'll discuss everything together in the morning." Carolina smiled triumphantly and went upstairs. Oliver decided to check on Chloe and followed her. He approached the bed to carefully adjust the blanket. But at that moment, Carolina entered the room. "She's asleep?" she whispered. "See, I told you everything would be fine." She wanted to stroke Chloe's hair, but at that moment the girl shuddered in her sleep, her body tensed, and a quiet, frightened moan escaped her lips. Oliver froze. Such a reaction spoke of pure terror. Carolina's words lost all meaning, leaving only a frightening, unanswered question. In the morning, there was an oppressive silence. Oliver insisted that they all have breakfast together, hoping that the sunlight would dispel the night's anxiety. Carolina was the epitome of care. She made Chloe's favorite pancakes and placed a glass of orange juice in front of her, talking animatedly about what a beautiful day it was. Chloe sat at the table like a small statue, touching neither the pancakes nor the juice. Her gaze was fixed on her plate, and her hands clutched the teddy bear sitting on her lap as if clinging to her only support. Oliver decided to initiate the conversation they had agreed on the night before. "Chloe, sweetie, we need to talk about what happened yesterday," he began kindly. "Carolina told me that you accidentally broke a vase." "Is that true?" The girl didn't move. Her fingers turned white from the tension with which she was clutching the toy. "See, she's gone silent again," Carolina commented with a theatrical sigh, placing the vase of flowers on the table. "It's her way of protesting, as the psychologist says. That's how children get attention. Don't rush her, dear. She'll calm down on her own." Oliver stared at his wife with a serious expression. He had canceled all his appointments for the week to devote time to his daughter. After breakfast, he invited Chloe to her playroom, and she silently followed him, clutching her favorite stuffed animal tightly in her hands. Oliver sat down on the floor, took out Chloe's favorite building set, and began to build a castle, describing each action and trying to get her interested in the game. Chloe sat down next to him, but her gaze was distant. She just watched her father build walls and towers, but didn't come any closer to him. He tried to joke, asking her simple questions about her favorite games and how she spent her time while he was away. But in response, there was only silence, thick and viscous, like fog. The days turned into one continuous, agonizing marathon. Oliver tried everything he could think of. He read her favorite fairy tales aloud, but she didn't react as she used to, not even turning the pages. Cartoons didn't interest her either. She stared at the screen with a blank look. Even walks in the garden didn't help. She walked beside him with her head down, clutching his hand tightly like a shadow, obedient and silent. All his attempts to bring up the subject of Carolina or what was happening at home were met with an invisible barrier. Chloe immediately froze, her breathing became irregular, and she hugged her teddy bear even tighter. Carolina, on the other hand, was the embodiment of calm and sympathy. She constantly offered her support, brought them drinks and sweets to the play corner, looking at Oliver with understanding and sighing quietly that the girl just needed time. By the evening of the fourth day, Oliver's patience had run out. He sat in his office, looking through family photos on his computer. There they were with Chloe on the beach, her infectious laughter, water splashing on his face. At the amusement park, her eyes were fixed on the carousel with excitement. In all these pictures, she was a real happy girl with a bright fire in her eyes. But in the last folder, taken after he got married, Chloe was like a different person. Her smile had become unnaturally forced, her gaze frightened. He found a picture taken shortly before his departure. In it, Chloe stood between him and Carolina. His arm was around her shoulder, and Carolina's arm was around her other shoulder. The girl in the photo, with her direct gaze into the camera, seemed to be asking for help, which he hadn't noticed at the time. He took out and printed one of the old photos in which he, Chloe, and her mother, who had already passed away, were posing during a picnic, sharing laughter. He entered the room where Chloe was sitting on the bed, combing the hair of her favorite teddy bear. "Here's what I found," he said, sitting down next to her and handing her the photo. Chloe grabbed the photo. She looked at her mother's smiling face for a long time, and the corners of her lips twitched. Gently running her tiny finger over the image, her eyes flashed with a glimpse of the bright girl she used to be. Oliver felt a wave of hope. "Remember this day," he began. "You were so funny chasing that butterfly," and with a quiet creak, the door opened and Carolina entered the room. "Everything is fine, my dears," she sang. "I brought you some warm milk." All hope faded from Chloe's eyes. She quickly hid the photo under her pillow, hugged her teddy bear, and, turning away to face the wall, once again resembled a small, silent statue. Oliver felt something break inside him. Slowly getting up, he took the tray of milk from Carolina and placed it on the table. "Thank you, my love," he replied in a calm voice. "I'll stay with her until she falls asleep. You need to get some rest." Carolina raised her eyebrows in surprise, but did not object. She glanced quickly and coldly at Chloe, who was curled up on the bed, shrugged, and left the room. Oliver closed the door behind her and, immersed in silence, sat down on the edge of the bed. He didn't say a word, just sat next to his daughter, feeling completely powerless. After a while, he left the room and headed for the kitchen, where he met Martha, the elderly housekeeper who was polishing the silverware. Martha had been working in their house since his first husband lived there and was one of the few people he trusted unconditionally. "Can't sleep, Mr. Oliver?" she asked, without looking up from her work. "No, Martha, I can't sleep," he said, pouring himself some water. "I don't understand what's happening to Chloe. She's like a stranger, not at all like her mother. It's as if someone has replaced her." Martha stopped what she was doing and looked at him with her dull but still wise eyes. "Children, sir, are like mirrors. They reflect everything they see. Perhaps the mirror itself has become distorted." "What are you trying to say?" Oliver asked bluntly, moving closer. "Nothing special," Martha said with a weary sigh, returning to her work. "Just an old woman who has seen a lot. I can see that the girl is frightened. Something has frightened her very much. Frightened by something or someone." Oliver softened his voice, even though they were alone in the kitchen. "Martha, I need to know. You're here every day. Couldn't you have noticed something?" She froze for a moment, her hands clenching the napkin, trembling slightly. "You can see a lot, Mr. Oliver, but you can't always trust your eyes, especially when you're told that you're not seeing what's really there. And your ears are even more susceptible. The walls in this house are not the strongest, though." "What did you hear, Martha?" he insisted again. "Please tell me." "I heard a vase break, sir," she replied, choosing her words with great care. "I was in the hallway. The incident happened the day before you arrived." Mrs. Carolina was screaming loudly at the time. "I went to investigate the noise and saw Chloe in tears with shards of glass on the floor." "Well, it's true after all," Oliver said desperately, feeling the weight of disappointment. "She broke the vase." "No, sir," Martha replied firmly, looking him straight in the eye for the first time during their conversation. "The vase fell from Mrs. Carolina's hand. She tripped while picking it up from the mantelpiece. I witnessed the incident. Chloe was just nearby at the time." Oliver watched her silently, and in his mind, the separate fragments came together to form a clear and frightening whole. Lies. It was all based on lies. "Thank you, Martha," he whispered. "I didn't answer, sir," she whispered quietly, returning to her work. "But if I wanted to know what was going on in the mind of a child who couldn't express his thoughts in words, I would pay attention to his drawings. After all, children always reveal their most intimate secrets on paper. Chloe used to draw all the time, leaving her albums everywhere." Oliver froze, remembering the old woman's words. He turned around and, as if pulled by an invisible force, rushed to the playroom. Turning on the light, he glanced around the room. Everything was perfectly clean, the toys neatly arranged on the shelves. He rushed to the dresser, where the albums and pencils were usually kept, but the drawers were empty. He searched all the shelves, looked under the sofa, but found nothing. It was as if someone had deliberately cleared away everything that could shed light on the past. In despair, Oliver sat down on the floor, and his gaze fell on a large toy house standing in the corner. He approached it and opened the miniature doors. In one of the rooms, filled with doll furniture, there was an old, worn-out sketchbook. With trembling hands, Oliver took out the album. Sitting down on the floor in the center of the playroom, he opened the first page. A wave of memories washed over him, bright, lively drawings created with colored pencils. There he was, Chloe and his late wife holding hands under a huge, seemingly smiling sun. There was Chloe on a swing, her hair blowing in all directions, her mouth open in a silent but joyful laugh. Oliver flipped through the pages, and with each new drawing, his heart grew heavier. These drawings were an echo of another life, a world he had lost and, through his own carelessness, failed to preserve. Somewhere in the middle of the album, the style underwent a metamorphosis. The sun disappeared from the canvases, giving way to thick gray clouds. The color scheme became dull, the figures of people angular and distorted. She appeared in the drawings for the first time, a new figure, always depicted on a much larger scale than the others. It had sharp, triangular shoulders, a predatory smile drawn with a thin red line, and empty black circles serving as eyes. In one of the images, this huge figure towered over a small girl cowering in fear, threateningly waving something resembling a stick. In another drawing, the little girl was enclosed in a black square with bars, while the huge figure watched her from outside with a smirk. Oliver turned the page, and his heart sank. The last drawing, done almost entirely in black pencil, was of himself, seen from behind, walking down a road leading to an airplane hovering in the sky. At the bottom, as if in a corner of his soul, was a little girl reaching out to him, her tears barely visible on the page. Nausea rose in his throat. He slammed the album shut as if it had burned him. This was not a child's game. It was a chronicle of fear, a silent cry for help that he had ignored. Guilt weighed on him, squeezing his heart. He had been so absorbed in his grief and new love that he hadn't noticed his child slowly fading away before his eyes. Now everything became clear. The empty gaze, the silence, the convulsive fear at the sight of Carolina. It was all part of the same picture. He had to act, but with caution. Direct conflict was useless. Carolina was too skilled at lying. She would deny everything and might even find a way to punish Chloe even more cruelly. He needed irrefutable evidence, something that could not be dismissed as a child's whim. Carefully placing the album back in the dollhouse, he decided to check the next morning at breakfast to see how accurate his guess was. "Honey, here's what I've been thinking," he began, trying to look as natural as possible as he poured himself some coffee. "Chloe must be tired of sitting at home all day. Maybe it's time to get her albums and pencils. I remember how much she liked to draw." Without looking up from what she was doing, Carolina spread jam on her toast. "Oh, honey, don't say unnecessary things," she said with a slight note of irritation in her voice. "Those scribbles just mess everything up. I threw them all away when I was cleaning up. She's 7 years old now. It's time for her to do something more meaningful. I've already found a wonderful ballet school for her that will help her develop discipline and grace." Oliver drank his coffee in silence, feeling an icy prostration wash over him. She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, as if she were talking about something completely insignificant. Her words were not just punishment for Chloe. They were designed to destroy her personality, to deprive her of the only way she had to express her suffering. "You're probably right," he said, as if in doubt. When Carolina left on business, supposedly to meet with friends, he closed the office door behind him and sat down at the computer. His fingers glided deftly across the keyboard. He wasn't interested in ballet schools. His search was focused on something else, the most sophisticated and inconspicuous hidden video surveillance systems. He studied reviews, compared specifications, and selected models that could be easily disguised as ordinary objects. Conflicting feelings swirled inside him. He felt like a traitor in his own home, but he understood that this was the only way he could find out the whole truth. He found what he was looking for and, without hesitation, clicked the buy button. Now he had only one task ahead of him: to play the role of a loving but blind husband. 2 days later, a courier delivered a small, inconspicuous box. Oliver waited until Carolina left for the spa, promising to return no earlier than evening. This was his chance. He told Chloe, who followed him around the house like a shadow, that he needed to go to his study and asked her to go to her room and do her own thing. Closing the door, he opened the package. Inside were 3 miniature devices. One resembled a phone charger, another a digital clock, and the third a smoke detector. After reading the instructions, he set up the data transfer to his secure laptop. The most important part remained: the actual installation. His heart was pounding in his chest, almost bursting out of his ribs, when he left the study. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was a spy behind enemy lines. He placed the first camera, cleverly disguised as a clock, on the mantelpiece in the living room, pointing the lens at the sofa and Chloe's favorite playmat. He carefully plugged the second one, disguised as a regular charger, into a socket in the kitchen, which offered an excellent view of the dining table. The most important third camera was installed in the hallway on the second floor, mounted on the ceiling directly opposite the door leading to the children's room. The installation took only 20 minutes, but for him, they seemed to drag on forever. He checked the image on his laptop. The picture was crystal clear, and the sound was distortion-free. All that remained was to wait, and this pause, full of uncertainty, was the most agonizing. The first few days were a real test. Carolina, knowing full well that Oliver was at home, continued to play the perfect stepmother. She was the embodiment of charm and care. She tried to get Chloe involved in baking cookies, gave her new picture books, and suggested that Oliver watch a family movie with them. Chloe remained silent and kept her distance. But Carolina just covered her lips sympathetically with her hand and looked at her husband, quietly muttering about how long it takes for a child's heart to heal. Oliver, as if following a script, silently supported her. He expressed gratitude to his wife for her patience, accepted her arguments, and pretended to believe her every word. However, every free minute he spent alone in his study, staring at the laptop screen where their artificial, invented family life was being broadcast, doubt grew in his heart. Maybe he really had made it all up. Maybe Martha was wrong, and Chloe's drawings were just the result of a child's imagination, traumatized by the loss of her mother. He felt his mind going crazy from the all-consuming tension. The denouement came 4 days later. In the morning, Oliver announced that he needed to go to the office urgently to sign a number of important contracts. He kissed his wife, promising to return for the evening reception. Carolina felt a surge of joy. She was finally going to stay at home as the rightful mistress of the house. Oliver did indeed leave the house, but only for a couple of blocks, after which he stopped in a secluded alley and connected to the cameras via his laptop. He watched as Carolina watched his car drive away, and in the next moment, her charming face contorted. Her smile turned into a cold, disgusted grimace. She entered the house, where Chloe was changing her favorite teddy bear on the living room sofa. Carolina walked over to her. "Your father is gone," she said in an icy voice that Oliver had never heard before. "We're alone again. Don't think your silence will last forever." Chloe flinched, hugging her favorite toy even tighter. "Do you really think he'll love a dull and spoiled doll like you?" Carolina continued, her words poisoned with malice. "Men like bright and attractive things, and you are just a living ghost of his late wife. He will soon get tired of you, you'll see, and ask me to get rid of you. We will send you to a special institution for people like you, for girls who don't appreciate anything or anyone." Oliver gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He watched as tears silently rolled down his daughter's cheeks. "What? Are you crying?" Carolina sneered. "Tears won't help you here. You have to work hard to earn your food and shelter, but you just ruin everyone's mood by doing nothing." She saw the plate with the untouched sandwich that Martha had left for Chloe. "You haven't even touched your food," she said contemptuously. "That means you're not hungry. Bad girls don't deserve treats." Taking the plate, she went to the kitchen and threw the sandwich into the trash can with ostentatious rudeness. Returning to the living room, her gaze was drawn to the teddy bear lying in Chloe's hands. "And this is an eyesore," she whispered, approaching the girl. "I've been wanting to get rid of it for a long time." She reached out to take the toy, and at that moment, for the first time in many days, Chloe let out a thin, plaintive squeak, filled with despair. She clutched the teddy bear so tightly as if her well-being depended on it. Carolina froze for a second, taken aback by this unexpected resistance. She glanced at the clock on the wall, then at the door, and apparently decided it wasn't worth wasting any more time. "Fine," she snapped, backing away. "Take your filthy rat. But remember, if you tell your father anything about our conversation, I'll make sure he hates you. He'll send you to a shelter himself and never see you again. Understand?" Chloe nodded, her small body shaking with sobs. Oliver closed his laptop. A cold, calculating rage settled in his heart. He copied the video to a separate drive, realizing that getting rid of Carolina by simply firing her was too easy. When he returned home that evening, Oliver felt like a completely different person. On the outside, he remained calm, even slightly tired after a hard day at work. But inside, he was seething with cold, ruthless rage. He realized that he was not dealing with ordinary cruelty, but with something more sophisticated and calculated. This was not impulsive anger, but a deliberate, cold campaign aimed at destroying his daughter's spirit. Simply reprimanding Caroline and showing her the door would have been too easy. He needed to figure out who she really was, where this woman had come from, whom he had invited into his home and into his life. He was eager to know everything. The next day, using an urgent meeting with investors as an excuse, he headed into the city center. However, his path did not lead to his company's gleaming skyscraper, but to a modest office on a quiet street, above which hung a modest sign reading Jacob Price, Private Investigations. Jacob Price did not fit the usual image of a private detective. There was not the slightest hint of a crumpled raincoat or the smell of cheap whiskey. He was a fit, middle-aged man in an impeccably ironed shirt, with a penetrating and balanced gaze. His office was the embodiment of order and conciseness. "Mr. Oliver," Jacob began, inviting him to sit in the chair opposite him, "my assistant informed me that you have an urgent and very important matter to discuss. I am ready to listen to you." "Yes, Mr. Price," Oliver said, sitting down and placing his thin briefcase on the table. "I need to know everything about my wife, Carolina. Information about her past, her relatives, her financial situation before I met her. Anything you think might be relevant." Jacob looked at him intently, not trying to peer into his soul, not asking unnecessary questions. "Do you have reason to suspect that your wife is not who she claims to be?" he asked calmly. "I have good reason to believe that I know nothing about her," Oliver replied curtly. He took a photo of Carolina and several documents with her personal information that he had managed to collect out of his briefcase. "This is all I have. She said her parents died in a car accident when she was a teenager, and that she grew up in poverty, working as a model to make it big. I'm asking you to check every single thing she said." "Confidentiality is guaranteed," Jacob confirmed, looking at the documents. "Deadlines will be met." "I need to know the truth as soon as possible," Oliver said. "Money is not a priority for me." "I'll start working on it immediately," the detective said. "I will report any results of my search to you via a secure communication channel." Oliver returned home and once again put on the mask of a loving husband. Those days of waiting were the most painful of his life. He watched Carolina closely, every move she made, every word she said, and now saw only hypocrisy in her every action. The smile she gave him transformed in his imagination into a predatory grin as soon as he turned away. He noticed how her attempts to hug Chloe were accompanied by a disgust that had previously gone unnoticed by him. He forced himself to eat at the same table with the monster, to sleep in the same bed, to talk about plans for the future, which for her was already just a memory. 3 days later, while Oliver was in his office, the first call came from Jacob. "Mr. Oliver, I have news for you." The detective's calm voice sounded over the phone. "Your wife's name is indeed Carolina. That is her real name. But, as it turns out, she changed her last name 3 times. "What do you mean?" Oliver asked tensely. "I mean that before she met you, she was married twice," Jacob added. "Both of her husbands were very wealthy men, considerably older than her. Their first marriage lasted a year and a half, the second just under a year. In both cases, the marriages ended in divorce by mutual consent." "What about these husbands?" Oliver asked, feeling a shiver run down his spine. "The first husband, the owner of a construction company, declared bankruptcy a year after the divorce. The second, a famous collector, was forced to sell a significant part of his collection to pay off unexpected debts. In both cases, Carolina left the marriages with a substantial payout, which, although not technically illegal, clearly indicated a deliberate scheme." Oliver was silent, trying to digest what he had heard. It was much worse than he had imagined. It wasn't just cruelty. It was deliberate, cold calculation. "Is that all?" he asked. "No, Mr. Oliver, that's not all," Jacob replied, his voice taking on new tones. "The most exciting part concerns her parents, who supposedly died in a car accident. Official documents confirm that such an accident did indeed occur. However, there is one nuance. I have discovered some financial documents that indicate that your wife transfers a substantial amount of money every month to an account at a small private sanatorium in the mountains, and she has been doing this for several years." Oliver froze, gripping the phone tighter in his hand. The atmosphere in his luxurious office suddenly changed, the air becoming oppressive and thick, as if he were back in that damp basement. "A sanatorium," he said slowly. "But you said the accident did happen." "The parents, they died." "According to the documents, everything is in order," Jacob confirmed, his voice coming through the speaker. "The accident did happen, and a couple with the same surname as your wife had before her first marriage died in it. It's too convenient a coincidence. But money, Mr. Oliver, money never lies. The transfers are real and consistent. They go to the account of an elite boarding house called Quiet Harbor. This establishment is not in the lower price range and specializes in caring for elderly people with severe neurological disorders, diseases such as dementia and Alzheimer's. You can find out who the money is going to." Oliver's voice sounded steely, unambiguously hinting at his readiness for action. "It's impossible to obtain this information legally. Medical confidentiality, you understand," said the detective, "but I have my ways. It's a process that will take time and require financial investment. We'll need to convince some employees to disclose the information we need. Do everything you can," Oliver said firmly. "I need to know who she's paying. I need to know what other lies she's told me." He hung up and remained silent for a long time, staring at a single point. The puzzle was becoming increasingly repulsive. Her living parents, whom she had supposedly buried, her hidden previous marriages, It all painted a picture of a terrible deception, and at the center of it all were he and his little, defenseless daughter. During dinner, he looked at Carolina and could see nothing but a mask behind her smile and cheerfulness. She talked about the upcoming charity evening she was planning to organize. She was thinking about the guest list, the menu, the color of the napkins. Her life was unfolding in the world he had created, but at the same time, she was destroying it from within. "Darling, are you even listening to me?" she asked, seeing that his thoughts had wandered far away. "I'm saying we need to invite the Winslows. It will really help your new project." "Yes, of course," he agreed, nodding. "Invite them. It's a wonderful idea." After dinner, Oliver went up to Chloe's room to read to her before bed, as usual. The girl, settled on her bed as always, hugged her favorite teddy bear. Oliver took a storybook from the shelf and sat down next to her. He began to read, but soon noticed that Chloe's attention had wandered. Her tiny hands were busy with a strange, repetitive movement. She kept squeezing and unclenching the same spot on the bear's stomach, as if checking something inside. And then Oliver understood everything. All his memories came flooding back. In the basement, she had hugged that bear so tightly as if it were her only support, her lifeline. When Carolina tried to take it away, Chloe, for the first time in a long time, made a sound, a thin, desperate squeak. This bear was no ordinary toy. It was more than just a soft toy to her. It was her only friend in this house. "You love it very much," Oliver said gently, putting the book down. Chloe nodded, her eyes fixed on her own hands. "He's probably your closest friend," he added. She nodded again. "True friends keep all secrets, after all," he said, looking intently at his daughter. At that moment, Chloe looked up at him. It was only for a second, but in that glance he saw a whole universe of feelings: fear, pleading, a desperate warning. She was silent, but her eyes said everything. She hugged her toy tighter and turned away, as if ending the conversation. Oliver finished reading the story, tucked her in, kissed her on the forehead, and left the room, leaving the nightlight on. But he didn't go to his bedroom. He waited. In the dark living room, listening to the silence of the house, he seemed to feel its every breath. He waited patiently for Carolina to take her bath and fall asleep. Only after making sure that there was not a single sound left in the house did he quietly return to the nursery. Chloe was sleeping soundly, her hand resting next to her favorite teddy bear. Oliver quietly and carefully picked up the toy. It felt unusually heavy for a regular teddy bear. Running his hand over the soft surface, his fingers stumbled upon the very spot that Chloe had so often and diligently fiddled with. Under a thick layer of stuffing, he found something hard, flat, and with clear edges. Oliver's heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was about to burst out of his chest. He froze, afraid to even breathe, and glanced at his sleeping daughter. Her face was peaceful in her dreams, and this idol only reinforced the gravity of the truth he held in his hands. Oliver carefully placed the toy back on the bed next to Chloe's hand and left the room, his fist clenched tightly around the hard object. He did not go to his bedroom, where Caroline was sleeping. Even the thought of being in the same room with her made him feel sick. Hiding in his study, he slammed the massive oak door behind him. Only in this secluded refuge did he allow himself to loosen his grip and examine his find by the light of a desk lamp. It was a miniature flash drive, carefully hidden under several layers of tape so as not to attract unnecessary attention. His hands trembled as he inserted the flash drive into the USB port of his laptop. An empty folder appeared on the screen, and he double-clicked on it. Inside were dozens of audio files, their names consisting only of dates and times. His heart sank. This wasn't just a flash drive, it was an archive of terrible events involving his daughter. He randomly selected a file in the middle of the list, put on his headphones so as not to make a sound, and pressed play. At first there was silence, then a faint rustling sound, as if Chloe was playing with a toy. And then he heard her voice. Carolina's voice, but not the one that usually made him happy, not the affectionate and gentle one. Instead, the voice was hoarse, hissing, filled with outright hatred. "Are you still with that stupid photo?" Carolina hissed, her words sounding particularly threatening in the recording. "Do you think your dead mother will help? She abandoned you, left this life and left you behind, and your father will soon follow her example." Oliver heard a quiet, barely audible sob. That sound, exuding tenderness and sadness, was his beloved Chloe. "Stop crying!" Carolina snapped. "Your tears are powerless. Understand one simple truth. Your father loves me, not you. You are just a burden to him, an unpleasant reminder of the past. He only puts up with you for the sake of appearances, but his patience is not eternal." Silence. Oliver could hear her ragged, rapid breathing through his headphones. "You know what he confessed to me last night when you fell asleep?" whispered Carolina, her voice like honey laced with poison. "He said, 'Carolina, I'm so tired of her whims. She doesn't remind me of herself anymore. Maybe it's time to think about a good boarding school for her.' Imagine, he wants to send you to boarding school himself. He just doesn't know how to tell you about it without looking like a bad father. Lies. Oh, what a brazen, disgusting lie it was." Oliver closed his eyes, trying to hold back the anger that was about to burst out of him. "But I talked him out of it," Carolina whispered. "I asked him to give her another chance because maybe she'll change. I'm protecting you, silly, and you don't even know how to be grateful. You just need to keep quiet and stay out of it. Do what I say, and maybe he'll let you stay. But if you talk to him even once, if you say a single word, I'll just say that you made it all up. And who will he believe then? I'll tell him that you, my dear wife, broke the vase. I'll say that you stole my jewelry. I can come up with so many lies that he'll decide to send you to a shelter and won't want to see you anymore. And then, finally, he and I will live in peace and harmony without you." The recording suddenly stopped. Oliver, as if burning himself, tore the headphones off his head. He froze, staring motionless at the screen. An oppressive silence reigned in the office. He felt empty, destroyed, and it wasn't Carolina's deception that caused this feeling, but something much deeper. He himself had allowed it to happen. He had brought this monster into his home. Oliver had been so blind and deaf that he had failed to hear his own child's cries for help. He had betrayed the memory of his dead wife, violated her greatness, betrayed his daughter, and ultimately betrayed himself. Each of Carolina's threats was like a blow to his most intimate self, because he understood the reason for Chloe's trust in her words. He was really leaving. He was really leaving her defenseless. He himself had become a tool in the hands of this monster, giving him a weapon against his own child. Suddenly, the calm was broken by a faint vibration. His phone trembled on the table. He glanced at the screen. an unknown number. His hand was already reaching for the reject button, but some intuition made him answer. "Oliver," he said, his voice hoarse. "Mr. Oliver, this is Detective Jacob Price," came a calm voice on the other end of the line. "I apologize for the late call, but I have some important information, and I would like you to hear it as soon as possible." Oliver remained silent, straining all his strength. "I'm listening," he finally said. "I've found out who lives at the Quiet Harbor boarding house," Jacob said. "It is indeed your wife's mother. Her father died there 5 years ago. But the main thing is this. I managed to get access to her medical records. They indicate a diagnosis of hereditary mental disorder. And there is a note that she has a daughter who refused to be examined even though the probability of passing on the disease through the female line is very high, almost 90%. The phone in Oliver's hand turned into an icy lump. The detective's last words seemed to turn into a verdict, connecting all the pieces like ugly puzzle pieces into one frightening picture. Now it was not just betrayal or malice, it was beyond reason. It was madness. What disorder exactly?" he managed to say, feeling his tongue go numb. "I'm not a medical expert, Mr. Oliver," Jacob said, and for the first time there was a note of sympathy in his voice. "But the documents contain a complex diagnosis that includes narcissistic personality disorder with pronounced sociopathic traits. Her mother's medical history indicates pathological lying, a complete lack of empathy, a tendency to manipulate and abuse those who are more vulnerable. There are several very disturbing episodes from her youth in her biography. According to doctors, all of this was most likely inherited." Oliver listened silently, and the last months of his life flashed before his eyes. Carolina's smiles, her kind words, her sympathetic sighs, all of this now appeared to him as a carefully thought-out game, a mask behind which lay a bottomless coldness. She didn't just play the part, she was that part to the core. She was a predator, skillfully disguised as a loving woman in order to catch her prey. And her prey was not only his life and his fortune, but also his daughter. "Thank you, Jacob," he replied, his voice even and impassive, something he had never noticed before. "You done your part. Send me the full report with the documents, and send me the bill." "You'll receive the report by email in 10 minutes, said the detective. "Mr. Oliver, be careful. You're not dealing with an ordinary criminal." "I know," said Oliver, and hung up. Overcome by loneliness, he remained in the silence of his office, which now reminded him of a battlefield. On the table lay a laptop with an open folder of audio recordings, silent witnesses to his inner torment. Next to it, a phone with fresh information about his wife's possible mental instability seemed to add fuel to the fire. And in the next room, his daughter, the main and innocent participant in this terrible tragedy, was sleeping sweetly. The guilt that had previously consumed him was replaced by cold clarity. Now he was tormented not by the question, "How could I not have noticed this?" but by another, "What must I do to stop this?" He realized that a standard divorce would not work. Carolina was too cunning. She would turn everything around, portray him as a tyrant and herself as a harmless victim. She would fight for his property, for his house, and worst of all, she would try to get custody of Chloe so she could continue her insidious behavior. The prospect sent a chill down his spine. He got up and walked to the window. The night was thick and moonless. Staring into the darkness for the first time in a long time, he felt not confusion, but a strong, unshakable determination. A plan was forming in his mind, clear and ruthless. He would not allow her to strike back. He would not allow her to turn their world into an arena of legal battles. He would put an end to all of this here and now. Returning to the table, he copied all the audio files from the flash drive, the video recording from the camera, and the detective's report to a secure cloud server. For extra security, he made another copy of the data onto a new flash drive, which he hid in his pocket. After that, he cleared all traces of his activity from the computer. He took a sheet of paper and a pen and began to write. Every word was carefully chosen, every phrase weighed. It was not a normal letter, but rather a plan, a script for his last meeting with Carolina. He thought through every detail, the time, the place, his words, her possible responses, all her possible reactions. His goal was clear, to deprive her of all arguments, to corner her, so that the only way out would be the one he offered her. When he finished, he glanced at the clock. It was almost 4 in the morning. Getting up, he went to the bar and poured himself some water. His hand was steady, not shaking. Anger and pain had been replaced by cold determination. He went back upstairs to Chloe's room. Stopping at the edge of her bed, he looked at his sleeping daughter for a long time, then carefully adjusted the blanket and gently touched her hair. "I'll never leave you again," he whispered in the silence. "Today, this horror will end." Returning to his office, he picked up the phone and typed a short message to Carolina. "Good morning. We need to discuss something important. I'll be waiting for you in the living room at 9 o'clock. Please be on time." Pressing the send button, he realized that there was no turning back now. The morning turned out to be surprisingly sunny and clear. Light streamed through the tall windows of the living room, creating patterns of golden rectangles on the parquet floor. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee. An hour before the scheduled meeting, Oliver gently woke Chloe. He was unusually calm and radiated tranquility. Helping her put on her favorite dress, Oliver said that an unforgettable day awaited them. "Martha and I are going to the zoo," he said with a smile. "You've been dreaming of seeing giraffes for a long time. And then we'll go to the ice cream shop and buy the biggest ice cream we can find." Chloe looked at him with her big, thoughtful eyes, as if wondering if it was all a mirage. She nodded without saying a word. When Martha came downstairs, Oliver took her aside. "Martha, I'm giving you the day off," he said calmly, handing her several large bills. "Take Chloe to the zoo, then have lunch at her favorite restaurant. Walk around as long as you like. Just don't come back until I contact you. Keep your phone with you at all times. It's really important." The old woman's penetrating gaze met his, and in her eyes he saw understanding mixed with concern. "Don't worry, Mr. Oliver," she replied in a quiet tone. "I'll take care of her." From the window, he watched Martha lead Chloe by the hand to the car. The girl never looked back. Left alone, Oliver walked around the house, carefully locking all the windows and doors except the entrance. He placed a thin folder with papers on the coffee table in the living room and a small flash drive next to it. Then he turned his back to the window, settled into an armchair, and waited. At 9 o'clock, the quiet click of heels on the marble floor of the hall broke the silence. Carolina entered the living room, impeccable as always. Her hair was perfectly styled, she was wearing an elegant silk dress, her makeup was barely noticeable, and the light scent of expensive perfume lingered in the air. A subtle, almost condescending smile played on her lips. "Good morning, darling," she sang as she approached him. "What's the matter with all this mystery? I thought you had some kind of surprise for me. Where's Chloe? Still asleep, our little sweet tooth." "Chloe left with Martha," Oliver said calmly, without changing his posture. "They have a holiday today." "How sweet of you," she said with a soft smile, settling down on the sofa opposite him and crossing her legs gracefully. "Sometimes it's good for us to just be together. So, what did you want to talk about? If it's about Chloe's behavior, I've already explained to you that it's not worth it." "No, it's not about Chloe," he interrupted her. "It's about you, Carolina. About our world. About the lies that fill it." Her smile faltered slightly, but she quickly regained control. "Oliver, why all the drama first thing in the morning?" She smiled, but there was a nervous undertone in her voice. "If you're in a bad mood, don't take it out on me." "Let's start small," he began, leaning in and looking intently into her eyes. "With the Chinese vase. The one that, according to rumors, my child broke." Carolina raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Since we've already discussed everything, why bring it up again?" "It was a lie," Oliver said firmly. "Martha saw everything. You broke the vase, then blamed a 7-year-old girl and locked her in the basement." Silence fell. Carolina's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, hard expression. "And you believed that crazy old woman instead of your beloved wife," she croaked. "I felt that she hated me from the very beginning. She just wants to break us up. Now, perhaps it's time to move on to more serious matters." Oliver dismissed her attempt to confuse him. He picked up the remote and turned on the huge plasma TV mounted on the wall. The screen showed an image of the living room, taken from the mantelpiece. Carolina froze when she saw herself on the sofa next to Chloe. He pressed play. Carolina's voice, filled with icy contempt, pierced the room. "Your father has left. You're just a living reminder of his dead wife. He'll take you to the shelter himself." Oliver kept his eyes fixed on Carolina's face. He watched as the color drained from her. Her pupils dilated, and fear, then rage appeared in them. You put cameras in my house," she said with difficulty, jumping up from the sofa. "You watched me in my own home." "How could you dare to do that? It's a crime." "What you did to my daughter while I was away was illegal," he said calmly. "But that's not the end of our problems." He picked up the remote again and turned off the video. Instead, a sound came from the speakers, an audio recording. Carolina's hoarse voice, creeping with menace, sounded like an appeal to a little girl. "Who will he believe? Me, his beloved wife, or a little liar?" Rage distorted Carolina's face, and she collapsed back onto the sofa as if someone had tripped her. "She's the culprit," she shouted, pointing at the ceiling toward the nursery. "That little bitch, she planned it all. She recorded everything. She wants to destroy our marriage. I told you, she wasn't as simple as she seemed." "Yes, she did it," Oliver confirmed. "My 7-year-old daughter, whom you terrorized for months, turned out to be smarter, stronger, and braver than I am. She found a way to signal me. She hid a tape recorder in her only toy, which for some reason you didn't throw away. You probably enjoyed tormenting her in front of her only friend." He paused, giving her time to process what she had heard. "Now let's talk about your previous husbands," he continued, his voice becoming even quieter, and therefore even more frightening. "About Mr. Henderson, the construction magnate who so conveniently went bankrupt shortly after your divorce. And about Mr. Davis, the collector who had to sell everything to pay off his debts. I'm sure it's just a coincidence." He threw a thick folder sent by the detective onto the table. It opened, and photographs spilled onto the floor. Carolina, smiling next to two elderly, respectable men. "And, of course, your poor parents," said Oliver, picking up one of the photos which showed an elderly woman with a crazy look in her eyes. "The ones who died in a car accident. How convenient that on the same day another couple with the same last name was involved in an accident. Do you ever visit your mother at the quiet harbor, or do you just send her money so she won't remind you of what awaits you in the future?" That was the final blow. Carolina froze, staring at the photo of her mother. All her anger, all her composure evaporated. Her face reflected genuine, primal horror. She looked at Oliver, and for the first time he saw in her eyes not a calculating predator, but a cornered, sick creature. What do you want?" she whispered. "I want?" He smiled without a trace of amusement. "I don't need anything any more. I am devastated, but not by your lies, by the fact that my blindness almost cost me my daughter. But I can offer you something." He pushed the folder with the documents he had prepared the night before toward her. "This is the divorce agreement. You give up everything, the house, the accounts, the shares, everything. You also sign a full and unconditional waiver of all rights to Chloe. You'll never see her again or come near her. You sign this, take your personal belongings, and leave. You have 1 hour. And if I don't sign," she croaked. "And if you don't sign." Oliver leaned so close to her that she could feel the icy calm emanating from him. "Then this little flash drive," he picked up the device lying on the table, "will go to the police. Along with a report of child abuse, another copy will go to the tax office. I think they'll be interested to know where you got such a large income after 2 previous divorces. And another copy, the most detailed one, with a report on your family history, will end up on the desks of your ex-husbands. I think their lawyers will find a way to get their money back. They will destroy you, Carolina. They will grind you into dust. And I will sit in the front row and watch it happen. The choice is yours." He stood up and walked over to the window, turning his back on her. He could hear her ragged breathing like the hiss of a snake. He could hear her pick up the pen. He could hear the sharp scratch of the pen on the paper. He didn't turn around. A few minutes later, he heard her footsteps receding down the hallway. Then the front door slammed. He was left alone in the silence. As the sound of the slamming door echoed through the huge house, Oliver stood motionless by the window for a long time. The silence that descended on the living room was unlike the silence that had reigned here for the past few weeks. That silence had been oppressive, full of unspoken words and fear. This silence was deafening, empty, and pure, like a vacuum after a powerful explosion that had swept away everything in its path. He slowly turned around. The room looked the same as it had an hour ago, but the air in it had changed. There was no longer the suffocating smell of lies, no longer the icy presence of the woman who had almost destroyed his life. On the coffee table lay the signed documents, his discharge papers. He walked over, picked them up, and without reading them, put them in a folder. He felt not triumph, but only boundless, all-consuming fatigue. The battle was over, but the war for his daughter's soul was just beginning. He walked through the house, which suddenly seemed foreign and too big to him. Every precious object, every picture on the wall reminded him of his stupidity, of his blindness. He went up to the bedroom he shared with Carolina. Her perfume bottles still stood on the dressing table. Her dresses hung in the open closet. He methodically gathered all her belongings into several large suitcases, not missing a single thing. He worked like a machine, his movements precise and emotionless. He wanted to erase every reminder of her, to burn her presence out of this house with a hot iron. When he was done, he put the suitcases outside the door and called security, ordering them not to let anyone onto the property without his personal permission. Only then did he allow himself to sit down. He dialed Martha's number. "Martha, it's over," he said, his voice trembling for the first time in many hours. "You can come home." "We're on our way, Mr. Oliver," replied the housekeeper's calm voice. Chloe ate 2 scoops of chocolate ice cream and even smiled when the monkey stuck its tongue out at her. Oliver closed his eyes and a single tear rolled down his cheek. Smiled. That simple word sounded like the most beautiful music to him. Waiting for their return was the longest wait of his life. He went downstairs and waited by the door, like a faithful dog waiting for its master. When he heard the sound of a car approaching, his heart began to beat faster. The door opened, and Martha appeared on the threshold, a small figure in a fancy dress hiding behind her skirt. Chloe entered the house and froze, her eyes darting fearfully around the hall, as if she expected to see the person she feared most in the world. She didn't see Carolina, but her scent, her invisible presence, still lingered in the air. Oliver didn't approach her right away so as not to scare her. He simply sat down on the staircase to be at the same level as her. "Hi, champ," he said softly. "How was your day?" Giraffes are tall. Chloe looked at him, then at Martha, then back at him. She nodded silently. "She's gone," Oliver said just as softly. "She's gone. And she's never coming back. I promise you." He saw fear and hope battling in her eyes. She still didn't believe him. She had lived in fear for too long to believe that it could end so easily. "Come to me?" he asked, reaching out his hands to her. Chloe slowly, hesitantly, took one step, then another. She approached him and stopped at arm's length. Oliver knelt down on the marble floor. He looked into her tear-filled but serious eyes. "Chloe, I have to ask for your forgiveness." His voice broke, and he didn't hold back the tears that streamed from his eyes. "I was a bad father. I was so blind and stupid. I didn't protect you. I let this happen. I failed you, and I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me, but I swear I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness. I'll never leave you again. Never." He cried openly like a little boy. He cried from pain, from shame, from relief, and from boundless love for this little girl who had endured more than many adults could bear. And then a miracle happened. Chloe slowly raised her tiny hand and touched his wet cheek. She looked at him, and her lips trembled. She was silent, but her eyes spoke louder than any words. They held forgiveness, understanding, and a deep, undeserved, childish love. She took another step and hugged him around the neck, tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. Oliver hugged her back. feeling her fragile body shake with silent sobs. They stood there for a long time, kneeling in the middle of the empty hall, father and daughter, two wounded people who had finally found their way to each other. And at that moment, their long and difficult journey to healing began. A year passed. The huge, cold mansion, which held so much pain within its walls, was sold. Oliver and Chloe moved to a cozy house on the shore of a picturesque lake, far from the hustle and bustle of the city and bad memories. He completely changed his life. He sold part of his business and delegated management of the remaining share, leaving himself only the minimum necessary control. His days were no longer filled with meetings and flights. Now, his main project was his daughter. They had breakfast together on the veranda overlooking the water, took long walks in the woods, picked berries, and built sand castles on a small beach. Chloe's silence did not disappear immediately. For the first few months, she still flinched at loud noises and spoke very quietly, as if afraid that someone else would hear her. Oliver found her the best child psychologist, and they attended therapy together. Gradually, step by step, the girl's ringing laughter returned. She started drawing again, and her albums were filled with bright colors, smiling suns, and funny animals. The old teddy bear still occupied a place of honor on her bed, but now he was not a protector, just an old, beloved friend. Oliver realized that all his millions were dust compared to real wealth. The opportunity to see his daughter become a happy child again. He had gained something greater than what he had lost. He had found himself as a father.